Girls, are we at the Big Blue drive-thru?
Yeah.
Yeah? What should we learn about next?
Candy.
Candy? Should we learn about candy? Hey guys, should we learn about candy?
Yeah.
All right, let's learn about candy. Scientists, we're back. And do you know what I found? I found a jar of candy. Should we do some science experiments with candy? Yeah, I think so too. Because candy is gross. What? I don't think candy is gross. Candy's totally gross. I mean, it's yummy, but the stuff that it can do to your teeth and your tummy is gross if you don't drink some water to dissolve or dilute the sugar. Or, wait a minute, what's in my pocket? You also need to brush your teeth when you're done eating sugar or drinking sugar, because it can do gross things to your teeth and your stomach. Yeah, so let's do some gross science with sugar and see how it dissolves and dilutes in our body. Okay, let's get started. Here we go. See you in a second. Bye. I'm going to go gather our materials.
Who wants to taste the rainbow? Or not? Gross. You're going to need 1 plate, 1 cup of warm water, and some Skittles. Okay, let's get experimenting.
Now that we have our ingredients, everything is ready to go. I want you to think about some science terms. Ready? These are the words we're going to think about. Sugar. Solution. Dissolve. Diffuse. And gross. Okay, so we are going to get started, and we are going to very slowly and very carefully pour our water around the perimeter, which is the outside edge of our Skittles. And let's observe what happens, because in science we observe. Just the coolest thing. It was like a rainbow in the rain. That was rad and gross. Well, not really gross, but it was pretty cool. So we just did a really cool experiment, but we need to talk about the why. Why did this happen? Well, Skittles are coated in food coloring. They're also made of sugar. And when we poured the water around the perimeter of the Skittles, the food color coating started to dissolve. It started to dissolve. And dissolving is when something is incorporated into a liquid, so it forms a solution. And we formed sugar water. So, as the coating started to dissolve, the color started to diffuse throughout the water. And diffuse, it basically means to spread out into a wider area. And as it diffused itself through the water, we created a solution. And a solution is a liquid mixture that is made of a solute, which in our case was sugar and food coloring, and it distributed itself or spread out in our solvent, which is water. And so you saw the color the food coating, it spread itself out across our plate to create a rainbow. Isn't that so cool? Now imagine that sugar and that food coloring dissolving on your teeth and in your mouth and in your stomach. Well, sugar is good, but it's not always good for you in a lot of quantity. So it's a good idea to brush your teeth and get that sugar that has dissolved in your mouth and diffused itself along your teeth and get everything back to normal. All right, that was really neat. Maybe we should do another science experiment. What do you think? All right, let me go get some stuff. See you in a second. Bye. So we just did an experiment with Skittles about dissolving and diluting. Now I have my jar of candy again, but I also have something else. I have a jar of yeast. What? Yeast is eukaryotic. It is a single-celled microorganism. And do you know what loves sugar? Yeast loves sugar. So I thought we should do an experiment with candy and yeast and sugar. A really gross experiment. I love sugar! So let me tell you a little bit about yeast. Yeast is a fungus, but it's a good fungus. It's a fungus that helps make food like bread, and it helps make some beverages. Now, it's a single-celled microorganism that's a fungus, but it does a lot of interesting things. Let me tell you about those things. Yeast is a leavening agent. That means it helps things rise. How does it do that? It does that through a process called fermentation. Everybody say fermentation. Fermentation, to ferment. Now, through fermentation, it produces gas. The yeast combined with sugar ferments and it produces gas. And that gas is carbon dioxide. Those are the bubbles that you see in certain things. And when you eat bread, those little bubbly holes inside your bread, those are produced by the leavening agent of yeast fermenting and producing carbon dioxide bubbles, which then create the yummy, fluffy deliciousness that is spongy bread. Do you see those little holes? Those little holes in the bread, like that big one, were caused by the carbon dioxide formed when yeast and sugar fermented. Delicious. Now, how does this work with candy? Well, if we combine water and sugar and candy, because candy is made of sugar, will something happen? Will it ferment and create carbon dioxide? I don't know. Let's start an experiment and find out. Let's go gather our materials, shall we? Okay.
For our next experiment, you are going to need 2 cups with warm water, 2 packages of yeast, 1 teaspoon of sugar, candy, and 2 spoons. All right, guys, go gather your materials and we'll see you back in a minute.
We have gathered all of our materials, and it is time to start our experiment on fermentation. Now, I also want you to keep in mind, when you're eating candy and sugar, what is that doing inside your mouth? What is that doing to your teeth? That's something to think about. Okay, so what are we gonna do? We are going to combine our water and our yeast, and we are going to mix them up. We now have a yeast and water solution. One of those cups is going to stay our control. We're not going to do anything to it. Into the other cup of yeast and water, we are going to mix in our candy and our sugar, and then we're going to continue observing. Do so now.
time to closely observe the fermentation process. That's so gross. There's so much carbon dioxide forming that the foam from the fermentation process is about to spill over. Happening is the candy and the sugar and the yeast forming carbon dioxide. Is it forming gas bubbles? Oh my gosh, keep observing. That was so gross. Now, why is that important and why should we be learning about yeast and fermentation and carbon dioxide and candy? Well, when we eat food and we eat sugar and candy, that candy and sugar does something in our mouth. So I'm going to show you why it's important for us to brush our teeth after we eat candy. Get ready. In your mouth, you hopefully have some teeth. And your teeth have an enamel on them. It's like a protective coating. And in our mouth, we also have some different kinds of bacteria. They're not really that bad, but they're in our mouths nonetheless. When we eat sugar and candy and food, that bacteria starts to feed off of those sugars. It feeds off that candy. And together, it then forms a coating. And that coating covers our tooth and forms plaque. And plaque is what then causes our tooth to decay or to break down and the enamel to break down, which is then what causes cavities. So this yeast and sugar fermented in our cup, but it also does the same thing in our mouth. And that's not so bad for short term. But if we don't go and drink some water to clean those sugars out of our mouth or brush our teeth and get those sugars off of our teeth, plaque starts to form, and the plaque then starts to form cavities. And nobody wants cavities. So guys, go brush your teeth, and I'll see you next time. Happy experimenting and stay gross.
And I like to brush my teeth.
You know what? Dr. Gross really misses you guys. And some of you have sent me some of the experiments that we've done together. You can also have your grown-up share them on Facebook on the Ladera PTA page. And Dr. Gross will see those messages there and the pictures of what you've done. Keep sharing, friends. I love seeing all your gross experiments and projects. Bye. See you next time.